Hello and welcome to another episode of Work 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wells, and today I'm joined by Tyler Denk. He is the CEO and co-founder of beehiiv. And today we're here to talk about the future of creators, creativity in the context of AI. Of course, we're always going to be bringing you all the good stuff, all the news, all the up-to-date information of what's happening. And I thought no other best person to talk about this topic than Tyler. So Tyler, welcome to the show.
No, thanks for having me.
So let's do a bit of a warm up. What inspired you to start beehiiv? When did you start?
Yeah. So we launched in 2021. The inspiration actually came from me and my two co-founders were early employees at Morning Brew, which went on to become one of the largest, most successful email newsletters, eventually acquired by Business Insider for $75 million back in 2020.
Wow.
So I was the second employee there. My two co-founders were also very early on the engineering side. So we kind of built the secret sauce, how the editor, the website, the monetization, like how everything worked internally to help us scale. We had built in-house. And newsletters have been having a moment for like the past decade. And so we saw the opportunity of how the times were shifting towards owned audience, owned distribution. You could speak to the rise of Substack. You could speak to the rise of other independent journalists going and building successful standalone media businesses. And from the Morning Brew experience, seeing that we kind of knew how to scale it successfully, we kind of thought that we had the secret sauce to be able to, quote unquote, democratize that for anyone else who wanted to tap into it.
Wow, that's incredible. 2021, that's like you guys are still in your baby years
We're infants still, yeah.
For sure. Okay, brilliant. So when it comes to where you are with beehiiv right now, you're positioning it more as infrastructure, right, for creators, more than just like, okay, the next MailChimp or something. So what do you think, why is it that creators need to think less like, a content creator or influencer and more like strategists? And what are the fundamental differences as they think about scaling their creative businesses?
Yeah, I think we're reaching a point in whether the creator economy or the content economy, because we work with a lot of large publishers as well. So it's not just creators. We have TechCrunch and Time and Newsweek. So large enterprise media companies as well leverage beehiiv to engage, create content, distribute that content, and engage and understand their audience. What I think we're seeing broadly is being a content creator in 2026 looks very different than what it did, several years ago. I think it used to be you can do short form video on TikTok and that's it. Or you're a YouTuber and that's it. Or you have a newsletter and that's it. But really what we're seeing is the most sophisticated and successful content creators today all are going multi-channel. And so they have a podcast where they also create clips for Instagram and TikTok, but they also have a newsletter. And then maybe they have a YouTube channel as well. And I think it's the most sophisticated and successful content creators know how to tie those different channels together, ultimately with the service of how do we engage our audience where they are and provide value. Right. And if you can provide value, you can also extract revenue. And how do they turn this into a successful business? And we've kind of built a lot of the tools and infrastructure to allow that.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, for myself, like a very obvious example, right? Obviously, you're on this podcast, which is hosted on Substack, and that goes to so many different like audiences on Spotify, on different podcast platforms. And then I also have my newsletter, and then I also have a LinkedIn newsletter, and then I write for Forbes. And so I'm kind of like, and then I'm on other like social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. So much like you're saying, I'm not just limiting myself to one platform. I'm trying to meet my audience where they are with the same message. And I think that's really, really critical, especially, I'm not sure if you heard this stat, that by 2027, more than half of the US workforce will be freelancers. So I think where you guys are positioned is pretty interesting because you're like positioning yourselves to be the ecosystem for this new wave of freelancers. And I kind of want to add to that. When it comes to, we think about content creation and blogging and those sorts of things, not everyone is your typical blogger, is it? Like no one goes into business saying, I'm going to do blogging. They may just be a product manager and do that just to build their thought leadership. Like how does beehiiv fit into that?
It's actually funny you bring that up. I think We've done a lot of research into like our core customers, and one of our largest customer segments is actually co-founders and CEOs, which I assume fall under the thought leadership bucket,
Mm.
or they do what I do because I have a personal newsletter that goes out every Tuesday to 130,000 founders, primarily in startup employees, but it's really to help build the brand of beehiiv and like the company that I'm building. So I think
Right.
we're also entering this era where founder-led marketing and CEOs and leaders understand the value of creating content and content-based marketing as a way to engage with a potential customer that may not be your customer today, hoping that if they engage with your content, they extract value from your content, they one day could convert into a paying customer.
Mm.
You're just kind of playing a more sophisticated long game. An example of that, HubSpot bought The Hustle. The Hustle was like the West Coast Silicon Valley equivalent of Morning Brew, basically daily business news about Silicon Valley and tech.
Right.
HubSpot knows that their customer is a founder or decision maker at a tech company, but no one wakes up and decides to buy a CRM for $50,000. So it's very hard to get a customer in HubSpot, and they do like lead magnets, they do webinars, like it's a very sophisticated pipeline. But they realize by acquiring the Hustle newsletter, they can actually reach their target customer, which are people who
Mm.
read Hustle every single day, Monday through Friday, through the newsletter. And instead of them advertising other companies, they advertise HubSpot. So on
Right.
day 100 of reading the newsletter, when your boss comes to you and says, "Hey, we need to buy a CRM," the one that's top of mind for you is HubSpot because they've invested in a
Wow.
very long funnel. And so I actually think that a lot of companies are waking up to like that is not the only way to acquire customers. It varies per company and per industry, but I think more companies are doing this content-led marketing, and I think it's really interesting. And to your point, I think we're very well positioned to serve them.
I think that is very interesting. Do you think then, following on from that, that there's this new trend of large organizations buying out newsletters?
Yes. So HubSpot has actually acquired 3 different newsletters on beehiiv in just the past
Wow.
year, as have a few other large companies. We had quite a lot of successful acquisitions on the platform of newsletters that were started from zero, grew to maybe 100,000, 200,000 or larger, and got acquired by either a larger media company or what we're seeing now is exactly what you alluded to, which is larger tech and non-media companies that are using it to get that end reader, knowing that those end readers could be a future customer.
That's really fascinating. I think that that's a really intriguing take when it comes to the creator economy, like you, and also what you mentioned about founder-led marketing, connecting directly with the customer. I think it gives it that personal touch. Like it's one thing having a company blog, but then when you have a blog directly from the founder, it just hits different, doesn't it? So therefore, kind of like moving on from that a bit, if we have a creator or a founder, basically like the author of this whole content creation engine, and they are running their infrastructure, their whole, like they're using AI as part of their workflow for, because you're one person, you can't split yourself across all these platforms without the use of AI. So if they're using AI to help them, obviously layered with beehiiv, where does the human voice find a place? Like what's the one thing that only they can do exceptionally well, which AI should not and cannot replace in that workflow?
Yeah, I actually think I could use myself as an example there. Like my newsletter, again, it's really a transparent behind the scenes look as I build the company. So when we were at South by or when we were at London that week, I like did a recap of my week in London, the meetings I had, like the reason why we're in the UK, why we're doing some sort of expansion. That's like not something you can ask ChatGPT of like how is beehiiv scaling internationally and what does Tyler think about it? Like it's kind of one of one differentiated content that is coming from my lived experiences. And like I view that as like very hard to replicate with AI. And so there's like different layers, like that's like more like experience based. There's analysis based. So like Ben Thompson from Stratechery is incredible at covering tech news. And I pay him $15 a month because I could get Meta's recent earnings, but I actually want to know Ben Thompson's take and thought and analysis on those earnings, which is what I'm paying for, not ChatGPT's thoughts on like synthesized opinions about what Meta is doing. And so I do think as content creators and publishers think about what role they play in this like AI enabled world, like the more differentiation and like one-of-one content you can create based off like expertise and analysis and experience, I think that's the part of humans. I'd push
Mm,
back and like how beehiiv thinks about it is we don't just have like a button that you press that's like write my newsletter and it just writes it for you and sends it like and there are people who do that, and there's definitely teams that have been able to build models and ways of being like, hey, if we want to cover crypto,
yeah.
for example, we can use AI to aggregate really interesting content and serve that without having a full team of editors.
Mm,
Whether the content's engaging and great is like to be determined, and you could probably make the argument in that case they could probably just go straight to Claude or ChatGPT for that same information if that's where it's coming from.
yeah.
Um, where we see value is building the infrastructure around what it takes to build a media company or be a successful content creator. So an example for me, and again, I just did this over the weekend. I wrote myself my first draft, took a few hours, wrote my draft. I created a skill in Claude using like the beehiiv MCP that we built to basically take in my draft, do fact checking, grammar, type, like spelling, formatting, like give me a better, basically be an editor for me. So it's like one
Right.
thing. The next thing I did is because the beehiiv MCP has access to all of my data and posts that I've ever sent on the platform, it can run an analysis to know what subject lines perform best. And it actually came up with really interesting data around like when I, for example, when I use the word beehiiv in a subject line, it performs 5% worse. When I have a location or it's less than 3 words, it performs like 3 to 4% better. Like really interesting quantifiable data that was only
Oh,
made accessible because the beehiiv MCP connected with Claude. So then once I was done with my draft, I just said, can you help me create a subject line? And it gave me 5 amazing subject lines to test. So like those are like part of the things where I see like it's augmenting what I already want to do as a content creator. And then like the annoying things like I have advertisers and reporting back like how the campaign performed. It's like 15 minutes of work, but I now have an automated like agent, if you will, using the MCP. And every Tuesday it sends me a advertiser performance report that I can send to that advertiser. So the end goal is as a content creator on beehiiv, you get to do more of what you want to do, which is creating content, and all of like the miscellaneous tasks that
yeah.
you don't want to do are kind of abstracted to like an AI.
That's incredible, incredible. That's like the admin kind of things that so you can focus on that creativity, like that creativity flow. Amazing. So what would you say then is like if you were to think about the non-negotiable ingredients, if you were to pick 3 non-negotiable ingredients that it will take to run a successful creative business in 2026 and for the future, what would those 3 core ingredients look like?
That is a great question. And you have teed me up where I have to give one of them as the platform of choice. Like, I actually do think it's really important. And obviously, I'm biased in talking my own book here and not going to criticize you for using Substack, but like
Yes.
using a platform that their business model is to build their business, which is what you do when you import your contacts to their platform. You're seeding that direct relationship. The business model is we take 10% of everything you earn, which is misaligned with your goals, which is to grow revenue and grow your subscriber base and everything else.
Mm,
And then like your job as a content creator is to diversify and be able to plug in wherever you want. So if your team eventually has a HubSpot, or if you want to use this other third-party platform, being able to integrate and build things across the open web, I think is really important to have that
yeah.
optionality. And platforms, not just Substack, but others in the ecosystem are closed gardens that have what I think is a predatory business model around taking a percentage of earnings and also lock you in into their ecosystem and make it harder and harder to leave.
Mm,
Using a platform like beehiiv where we do not take a cut of revenue, where we have full open APIs and webhooks and integrations with whatever Salesforce, HubSpot, Shopify platform that you want to integrate, it gives you as the content creator much more optionality, and
right.
we're not taking revenue from you. So I do think it's important as a content creator, like when you're going to take that leap, who do you want to bet on that actually has like a aligned business model and
Mm,
structure for you to flourish? So one would be platform.
right.
Two, I think is like consistency. I think any successful content creator, whether it's Mr. Beast, who said that he posted videos for 10 years before ever any of them got like more than 1,000 views,
Wow.
to almost all of these podcasts know how much of a grind it is to create a podcast, do all of the editing, and you get 15 downloads. And the next week, maybe it's 20. And you really have to build it up over time to build that reputation, that muscle with your audience. For me, like it's creating the behavior and habit that they can expect an email in their inbox at 9 a.m. every Tuesday. So consistency, I think, is like a big part of being a content creator.
100%.
And I'd say the third one is like a willingness to experiment. Like I trying, whether it's a newsletter, different formats, different styles, different cadences, whether it is, hey, you've always been newsletter first, but you want to try podcasts or you want to do clipping and do some video. I think the best content creators are good and willing to test different mediums and strategies and are very receptive to feedback. Because ultimately, their customers, their audience, and if they stop thinking about what's best and serving the audience, then they're going to lose their audience and like that relationship. So I think those are probably like the big three that I would think about.
Fantastic. I totally agree with you on that, especially when it comes to consistency. Like, you know, we hear the phrase, good things take time. I feel like everyone's trying to, you know, win a fast game, especially in the AI era. It's easy to think, oh, because I'm using AI, I can get rich quick, I can build my audience quick, and everything's going to be quick. And it doesn't work that way, is it? Like what you're saying, you have the infrastructure in place, which is AI optimized, but ultimately you've got to show consistently, and eventually the results will trickle in. AI is not going to be a shortcut. So thank you so much, Tyler, for sharing that. And just a final thing from you. If you were to sum up like the future of the creator economy, you know, let's imagine we're in 2027 and more than half of the US workforce, like we said at the beginning, is they're freelancing, they're thought leaders, they're startup founders, and they're using beehiiv, whatever. What's the one word that would sum up that moment for you?
If I had to narrow it to one word, I'd say abundance. I think, again, like when we initially started beehiiv, it was me and a team of 5 engineers at Morning Brew spent 4 years building tech to make Morning Brew as successful as possible. And the truth is most content creators or even other orgs don't have 5 engineers dedicated to building like custom software to make their newsletter and now website and now podcast successful. And in this short time between beehiiv launching and a few of the other platforms in the ecosystem, it's never been easier to get started for free. So there's no, outside of your time, you're not putting up thousands of dollars. You know, like how many startup companies want to launch, but they need to they need to find an engineer, and they need to find like, in the decades ago, it was servers. Like there's a lot of upfront costs to starting anything. And now it's really, especially for content, it's kind of free to get started, both on beehiiv and a lot of these other popular platforms. And then the next wave is, how do those platforms help you succeed and grow? And we built all of the tools that we built at Morning Brew to help us grow faster into beehiiv. So we help you scale quicker. And then the last one is monetization. And I think where other platforms either don't offer monetization or are very opinionated, we allow you to monetize with ads, with subscriptions, with digital products. So I think the diversity, that'd be my second word if I was given a word. One's abundance and 2 is diversity.
I kind of think they feed into each other, isn't it? Because when you have that diversity, those options, then you get that abundance of income and all those options. And yeah, for sure.
But I think like
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that there's a world where like a lot of these platforms only allow you to use ads, for example, like YouTube, you know, you upload and then you have ads, like what the platform provides out of the box. I think giving more optionality and diversity of revenue and opportunity for these content creators is like really important, because there isn't a one size fits all. That's what makes my job as hard as it is. Every content creator I speak to is totally different in the types of content they're creating and how they want to serve their audience in what they want to accomplish. And so it's my job to build the most expansive and flexible platform that can serve to TechCrunch and a hobbyist who's starting out to write about politics. So it's difficult, but yeah, I think that's what we're excited about.
Wow, what a mission. Thank you so much for lending your time to this podcast. And for those of you who enjoyed listening or watching this episode, feel free to leave your comments or questions below, and I will try and direct them to Tyler and see if he can respond. Also, don't forget to share this episode with a coworker. Don't forget to rate this episode wherever you've listened to it. Rate the podcast, share it with your friends, comment and share on LinkedIn, and follow us so that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of work and AI and the future of work, so you can be prepared for what's happening next and how it's going to impact you. And I'll see you next Monday on Work 2.0, the podcast.